Hello, friends. The end of the year is upon us, and I thought that a retrospective of 2024 is a good idea. I'm bringing you clips from the most views interviews and from those discussions that were quite challenging, interesting, and will give you some food for thought. So please enjoy it, leave your comments, and if you want to support the channel, you can do it either by going at claudiumurgan.com or spirituallyinspired.ca. I wish you a Merry Christmas, a wonderful New Year, and prosperous, of course. And until next time, love and gratitude.
Well, yeah, because we're uncovering things that we have bought to be true, like, oh, civilization started in the Middle East, 5,000 years ago. And now we find there were big civilizations here 10,000 years ago and they disappeared. And all of a sudden it says, wait, the Earth has a much longer history than we currently know about. So we're revising our understanding of the world from everything from the history to the biology to the physics. It's all being revised because we need to move into the future with the knowledge that is more accurate than the one we have been believing.
Yes, and I think one of the theories and concepts we have to come to terms to is that Earth is a living, breathing organism in continuous change and movement, and we are moving and evolve with her because we live on her surface.
Well, it's more than we live on her surface. We came from her surface. The Bible story says, oh, God created the planet and then put water and trees, blah, blah, blah. And then he added humans. And I go, wait a minute. Humans came from the garden. They weren't added to the garden. We are the garden. And our theories have left us with the Darwin theory. You say, well, why are we here? And the Darwin theory is based on a whole bunch of accidental mutations that led to us being here, which is 100% false. We came here with a purpose. Humans have a purpose on this planet. And the purpose is this. Every time a new organism is added to evolution, the life of that organism changes the environment. They eat food, they put out waste. And so to try to keep balance, nature always adds another organism to balance the previous one. But then this one goes out of balance. So nature adds another new one, and that goes out of balance. And we're at the top of all of this because we are the most powerful organisms that can influence the environment. And the problem is we have no knowledge of this. We thought we got here by accident. It's like, no, the Native Americans, for example, knew that this was a garden. And their society was, we are gardeners to take care of the earth. Well, we lost that picture, where the Europeans came here. Now they destroyed every damn thing because somehow we have a belief that we are here to control, we are the dominant force and we have dominion over nature. And I go, well, with our ruling, we are destroying the environment so fast that our survival as a species is now in question.
Yes, it's unfortunate that, like in Black Panther, the South and North America didn't have an energy shield to prevent Columbus and all the other conquistadors to see the land and go and conquer and pillage and change a whole continent
Well, this,
over the
it's
hundreds
quite
of years.
unfortunate because I really want to recognize for people to let them know I'm a very spiritual person. From a biological point of view, it's not, oh, a new idea, spirit. I go, no, it's physics and biology. That's what spirit is. And the significance is religion has made a business out of spirit, and with their belief systems, we are not just destroying the environment. Oh, we have dominion over it. Oh, we're destroying each other because the programming of religion is fight one another. Oh, my God is the God. Your God's not the God. And three basic religions, Christianity, Muslim, and Judaism, we all came from the same source. It's religion that has separated us. And what we have to do is come to recognize we are all spiritual entities. We are all part of God, and that nobody can separate us from God. We can't even separate ourselves from God. We are a piece of God. We are creators. And then you look at the world and go, wow, we're not doing a good job at the creation. We're better at the destruction than the creation. And so this is why I really want your audience to understand we're in a transition. The chaos that you see all over the world is not an accident. The chaos says, and this is a fact, well, I'll give you the math and then that will make a point. According to science today, if we want to just keep everything running the way it is today, we need the resources of 1.6 planet Earth. Well, wait, we have a problem. We only have one planet Earth. And we're using resources beyond what the planet can provide. And it says, so in the process of getting all those resources, we are destroying the environment. And the reality is this, it's our civilization's culture, the behavior of the civilization that is responsible for the destruction. The heat of burning the fuel, okay? But when we burn the fuel in our body, we also get waste product, and they're called free radicals. And free radicals are like highly charged atoms, like bullets, high charge. And the free radical waste from digestion shoots the holes in cells and kills the cells. The more we eat, the shorter our lifespan. And so we have to come to a new consciousness that says, wait a minute. And now there's some science that hasn't even come into the public yet, okay? That says, you know how plants get energy because they have chlorophyll, the green stuff, and the light hits it, and then the chlorophyll translates the energy into food. We have something like chlorophyll. It's called melanin. It's the pigment in your skin. Guess what? It does the same thing as chlorophyll. It takes energy out of the environment. And we could get 90% of our energy just by being in the environment. That means we only need 10% extra from food. Well, with supersize me meals and bigger meals, and we're eating so much food that the digestion of that food is causing us to lose 50 years of our life. And that if we cut down and eat a small amount of food, we could live to over 150, and we wouldn't destroy the environment by growing more food. We wouldn't have to cut down the rainforest to make more hamburgers. The idea is we could live here without destroying the environment if we just ate a small amount of food like the original people on this planet. They were hunter-gatherers. They didn't know if they were going to eat. They would wake up in the morning and we'd start walking. Will we find something? Maybe, you know? But the point was then biology revealed that these people could live with hardly any food because there wasn't a grocery store. There was no place to get food. If you found it, great. And if you didn't find it, you could still go. So I'm bringing this in because it's a new biology that hasn't even hit the public yet. And it basically says, you want to live longer? Start eating less and less. You can't just stop and say, today I'm just going to eat a little tiny bit. No, you have to, what you say, wean yourself off of food. Slowly reduce the consumption of food. And then when you get down to the smallest amount of food, you can live to 150 years. I know, because this is new stuff. And you know what? I'll tell you where the whole thing came from. Where did the idea that we could get energy from just around the energy around us? The Chernobyl nuclear plant, when it blew up, every year they would send a robot with a camera to see what was going on inside. And in the reactor, in the middle of the reactor where all the radioactivity was, right? After 5 years, they started finding black mold growing on the walls, just like the black mold in a shower or the shower curtain or that same mold, okay? And they said, how could something grow in the reactor? And it turns out it's the black in the mold that translates radioactivity into biological energy. Okay. And I say, so what is the black in the mold? The same pigment we have in our skin. And the point about it is that pigment, melanin, can take radioactivity and turn it into fuel. So we're like plants. We don't need to eat so much food. That would be evolution. Well, think, how would evolution benefit if they made an organism eat the environment up? It would end it. Oh, well, that's where we are, because we have a misbelief, and it's a wake-up call that says, you want to live longer? Eat less. The less you eat, the longer you live. And if we learn that as a civilization, then we could, support the environment and not destroy the environment to make more food.
Yeah.
If there's a flying saucer that came here, they have much more intelligence than we have. So I wouldn't fear them. I would welcome them and say, teach us, because you're ahead of us. Thought, people out there, I want you to listen to this podcast. I want you to listen to all of his podcasts, because it's time for new knowledge. The knowledge we've been operating from is self-destruction. Then we're seeing it live. You just have to you watch the news, surf the web, look out your window, and you see the whole world is crazy. And that's because it doesn't work. And that we're going to create a new civilization. But to create that, you need knowledge. Knowledge is power. And this podcast with my dear friend Claudiu over here is a source of new knowledge. I highly recommend stick with the podcast, take the knowledge in, because it's time for us to change our beliefs. We're not victims, we are creators. And the difference between victim and creation, knowledge. And so I hope that you stick with these podcasts, because it's the knowledge that will help you evolve into a better world that we're looking forward to.
Thank you very much for your wise words, for the encouragement, and for everything you do in the world. You are a beacon of light along with your friends. You are traveling with them all over the place, Greg, and sometimes Joe and Lynne McTaggart, which I interviewed several months ago. It was a pleasure as well.
You're a friend of mine, yes.
Yeah, and also Dr. Emoto, when he's talking about that, he's talking about something that is in his location. In my experiments, invariably the target is out in the field. Let's say it's a war-torn area, or it's an area of high violence, or it's seeds in a laboratory in Arizona. And I'm here in the UK, and my readers are all around the world from 80 countries in a particular experiment. And we always have people from around the world taking part. So they're never in the vicinity of the experiment. Whereas, as I say, what we're talking about, Dr. Emoto and I knew him. He was lovely. We did an experiment together. But in his circumstances, a lot of the time, he has the experimenters right there, touching the water, being near the water. And we know from evidence from numerous physicists, particularly the work of Emilio Preparata and Dr. Del Giudice of the University of Milan, two physicists that discovered that water has coherent domains, meaning it's like a tape recorder. Its molecules essentially coalesce around a charged particle in there. So a thought, an intention, and anything like that, music or whatever, can be embedded in water. So I can see why they would want to shield it. And you've probably read about that in The Power of Eight, we measured brainwaves of novice intenders who were part of Power of Eight groups for the first time, and discovered that their brainwave signatures, which we thought were going to be just like meditation, were nothing like meditation. They were almost identical to the brainwave signatures of of Sufi masters during chanting, or Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer, as measured by Dr. Andrew Newberg, the neuroscientist, then at the University of Pennsylvania. So what we've seen is changes in brainwaves, incredible changes, amazing changes that are turning off parts of the brain that make us feel separate. So the parietal lobes, the temporal lobes, the right frontal lobe, the part of the brain involved in worry, doubt, negativity, these are all dialed way down. So the people are essentially in a state of ecstatic oneness. And it's my belief that that's where the miraculous changes occur.
Yes, I mean, it is fabulous of what you discovered around along with the groups and the tests and the experiments, that people can take these concepts and apply them locally to their own community. And to be honest with you, I am doing the same thing with my own group of friends for one of us who is in need. She's going through a rough time, and we gather every night around her in a visual circle, and we send her love and energy, and we are monitoring the effects for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that's very powerful for every community to apply this type of concept.
Absolutely. In fact, I have some free tools on my website in a section called The 8 Revolution, because I started thinking about it and started thinking, boy, the world is a mess right now. We need an army of change makers. And then I thought to myself, well, we actually have an army of change makers. There are tens of thousands of Power of 8 groups around the world. What if I had them band together and start using tools in their communities and using intention to heal their communities? So I'm providing free tools in this area on my website, LynneMcTaggart.com, for people who are interested in doing that. Yes, I mean, I think it's time for, in pretty much so many countries, I can think of a few exceptions, but not many. I think we need to get rid of our leaders. And we have to come up with a completely different way of creating our world, basically, a new economics, a new way of doing things, not like that are beyond communism or capitalism or anything like that. As you say, most people want a peaceful life. They want a safe place to live, a good school for their children, meaningful work. You know, most people want all of the same things, but we get greatly polarized by the political landscape, and it's getting worse and worse.
I agree. And I studied common law a little bit in the last 3-4 years. And it's such a rabbit hole type of adventure that you won't believe what's in there. And in fact, you call a country just a piece of land, but there is no country. It's a corporation, which usually is a foreign corporation, and they run us as being its employees. So it's so deep, the corruption goes so deep that is frightening, and people don't want to listen or even learn about what's being done to them.
I think people woke up a bit more after COVID. Yes. I think in observing what's gone on and the authoritarian rules that came about with COVID, a lot of people started questioning and saying, wait a minute, are they telling us the truth? And I think people are starting to wake up about the levels of corruption, but it's difficult to know what to do because we're given very limited choices. So my own feeling is, don't look at the top, look at the bottom, look at ground up and from the ground up and local change. So you just need your neighborhood, your community, and start working with that. That's why we created the 8 Revolution, because every good social movement started with a small group. if you look at Martin Luther King, he had a handful of people who were marching. It wasn't a big march. It wasn't a big deal, but he was very smart about his PR and made sure at one of them when there was a bit of a standoff between his freedom marchers and the very redneck police of this one area of the South, he made sure there was a photographer nearby when one of the policemen who had, a savage-looking dog with him took a lunge at a very nice-looking and Pacific-looking young Black teenager. And that picture changed everything. That went around the world. It was on the front page of every newspaper in America, and it launched the civil rights movement. By the same token, Gandhi, liberated in India from the British by giving local communities a little spinning wheel, creating local industry so that India was no longer dependent upon Britain for its textiles and suddenly had its own industry. And that's what he realized is starting small creates a big revolution. And so I don't worry about the people on top. I am concerned about the people on the bottom. Yeah, but this is a unique time where most people are not getting their news from the conventional media anymore. People are getting their news from things like this, or social media, or one of umpteen kinds of independent sources, some good, some bad. So people are looking out for different ways of getting news. And this is a time more than any other that I can think of where anybody can start up something that starts providing information or starts a movement. We are creating all kinds of independent ways of communicating now. Now, one thing that we haven't talked about, though, that I think is one of the most powerful things in making change is, as I mentioned, what happens to the participants of an intention experiment. Now, I started surveying people back in 2008 after the first peace intention experiment, the one for Sri Lanka. And it was just to find out whether or not they'd been able to get on, whether or not they had any difficulties with their computers, what the experience was like for them. And I was astonished to see people saying things like this. I felt like I was part of a higher network. I had goosebumps up and down my arms. I was crying uncontrollably. I felt like I was in a tractor beam in Star Trek. People were feeling unbelievable energy and heat. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. These are people who participated around the world in front of their computer screens. So they were sitting by themselves, as I am now, and you are. And yet we're having this connection. But more than that, they started saying things like this. I made up with my estranged partner. My grown child who hasn't called me for 4 years suddenly picked up the phone. I'm getting along better with my boss, my not very nice boss, or my coworkers. And 50% said, I feel more love for everyone I come in contact with. People were hugging strangers. So this blew my mind. And when I started calculating it, about 40% of people said they were getting along with the people around them. 50% more in love with everyone they come in contact with. Another amazing statistic was that about a third of those participating said that some condition of theirs, some health condition, was better or completely cured.
Yeah, so about 2 months ago, I was given 15 locations around the planet. And I was told to go and buy some very specific crystals. There was 30 crystals in total, 2 crystals that had to go to each location. And I was told that I needed to go to these places and lay them down to build a new grid. So I bought a map of the world and I put the dots of these 15 locations and I drew them together. And it was a perfect dragon's wing. And so we literally traveled to 15 different countries. We started in Romania. We ended up in Ireland. We went to Russia, Ethiopia, Easter Islands, Peru, Hawaii, Prague, Italy, France, Tibet, like all over the place, man. And we buried these crystals in the ground in specific locations and activated this dragon's grid. It's a 7th dimensional architecture, and it's the framework that's going to hold the new divine mother frequencies coming to planet Earth. So it's quite a big deal. But not only that, this dragon's wing is acting as the catalyst, like a key, to activate the solar clock. And the solar clock is like woven through the fabric of space-time, and it's not like a clock that ticks forwards or ticks backwards, but it kind of winds and compresses energy. And what's going to happen is once it kind of compresses and reaches a convergence point, then boom, there's going to be an explosion. And this is what's going to create the solar flash, the solar flares coming to Earth, which will upgrade humanity's DNA in a massive way at some point in the next years. So that's the kind of mission we've been on. It was a crazy mission, went to some wild places, had lots of trials and tribulations, loads of beautiful moments. And yeah, came back a few days ago. So yeah, it was awesome to be a part of that.
Thank you for sharing. And do you know if someone else will activate the other wing and the body, or just what you did is enough for the full activation you just mentioned?
Well, I've already been given the locations for the tail, which we're going to go and do in November and December, which is Hong Kong, New Zealand. It's kind of over that part of the world. And then I'm just waiting to see if we get the other wing, if we get the body. I'm not sure. Maybe someone else is doing that. I'm not sure at the moment. I know that no other parts of the dragon have been laid yet. This was the first wing. But maybe we'll get the whole dragon. Maybe someone else is going to do another part. I don't know at the moment. It's just kind of like it's a mystery. You know, normally things happen quite spontaneously. I had no plan of doing this trip. I had my August was completely fully jammed with stuff to do. But when I got given this mission, I had to cancel everything, you know? So yeah. So the beings that gave me this task, there were 2 sets of beings. One were the cosmic grandfathers, which are these kind of 70-foot ancient grandfather beings that I work with in the cosmos. And then the dragon kings and dragon queen families, like they were working together on this. The dragons have been building the architecture for Earth and other planets and stuff for a long time. At the moment, the dragons are higher dimensional beings. There are some that shapeshift now and again into what look like humans, walking amongst us to get other bits of work done. But most of the time, they stay in their higher dimensional forms. Coming in as an actual dragon into this reality field, I don't think that's going to happen. Like physically, not now. We're not ready for that stuff anyway, as a species. But the dragons are amongst us in higher frequency bands. They're down in Earth. They're in different kind of crystal cities. They're here in the space around us, but on a different frequency band, and they're monitoring us really closely through this ascension process and helping us. The dragons, if you go back like billions of years through galactic history, the dragons went through their ascension a long time ago. So like what we're going through as a species on planet Earth, which is kind of coming through this kind of dark to light and getting everything in balance and you know, reclaiming our kind of power and our multidimensional elements. The dragons did that a long time ago. They went through a lot of darkness. The dragons were in a very dark space, and they went through the process, and so they know what is required of us to go through our ascension process, and they're helping us with it. They know the importance of planet Earth. They know the importance of this living library that we're having this game of life on, and they know how important it is for humanity to reactivate the kind of angelic humanoid DNA templates that we had on other planets, you know, before we kind of like got down regulated on Earth and became a sort of shadow of our former selves. You know, we went to some very dark places. We went to some very high frequency places. The crystals that we had to lay down and the grid points that we had to lay them in were different from any of the existing ley line grids and grid networks that are kind of, you know, woven through Mother Earth at the moment. Some of them were near to like nodal points that have already been activated and have been active for a long time on planet Earth, but none of them were in the same place. So some of these places that we went to were kind of real heavy. I mean, one of the heaviest places that we went to, which was quite surprising, was Tibet. Tibet was heavy. We had a huge battle with a load of darker beings when we got there to collapse the wall of time. The wall of time has been housing some of the ancient blue-ray Melchizedek races, which are some of the highest frequency beings bringing higher dimensional light codes to Earth for a long time. They were trapped in the wall of time for a very long time. And when we went there, we got woke up at 3 a.m. on the first night and went into this crazy kind of like multi-dimensional battle, multi-dimensional kind of piece of grid work to collapse this wall of time and free these Melchizedek races, which was amazing. And we kind of exited a number of low vibrational forces from planet Earth. It went on for hours, but it was beautiful. Yeah. We went to Ethiopia. Ethiopia was amazing. And we went to some places there. Some were really heavy, some were really dark. We had to go to the Vatican at one point to do some work there. That was, I mean, the Vatican is just you know, a cesspit of darkness and heaviness. So yeah, we went there and did some work, and we went to some beautiful places, man. I mean, Easter Island was amazing. The places we went to in Peru were just off the chart. So it was a mixture. France was amazing. We went to the Golden Triangle. I had to do some work on like Mary Magdalene land, which was beautiful. Yeah, you could feel the energy difference in different places. Yeah, and even in some places, like it was beautiful here, and you take 2 steps to the right, and it wasn't so nice, you know. So as you were crossing, you know, different points, different barriers of frequency, different levels of consciousness within the same space, you could feel the energy shift. Yeah, I mean, we're building our first healing center in Romania, Transylvania. So I mean, Romania for me is it's a beautiful place. I love it. We're building a house there at the moment. In a few months' time, I'm going to be living there all the time. I absolutely love the place. The energy is off the chart. There are some amazing places. I mean, where we laid our first crystal grid, the first crystals as part of the grid, was right near Sama Segitusa. And, you know, underneath Sama Segitusa, it's like an Arcturian base. I mean, the place is off the chart. We had an amazing experience when we went there. We had to, like when you go to Sama Segitusa, you've got all of the wooden like blocks, pillars that are coming out of the ground that form that kind of geometrical structure. And you're not allowed inside the circle, but we had to go into the circle. So I was there with my girlfriend. She came on the trip with me along with Cherie, who heads up our video team. And we had to go into the center of the circle to pick up some codes. And I was asking, can I just take my light body into the center? And I was told, no, you need to go there physically. So there was security all around the place. So my girlfriend went to one side, I went to the other side, and we had to walk right through the center. And at the center, we stopped. We had a hug for maybe 20 seconds, which seemed like an eternity when all the security guys were screaming at us, but we just had to do it. So we walked down the central column, stopped in the center, hugged each other, uploaded the codes, and then carried on walking, went out the opposite exits, and then Yeah, we just pretended that we didn't speak any Romanian, and they just kind of left us alone after a while, after a few minutes of screaming at us. And then we downloaded the codes into the crystals and went and buried the crystals in the woods. But Sama Sajatusa is amazing. Like when we were walking up the road to it, and I saw a doorway, a multi-dimensional doorway in the path, and I stopped and I was asking, like, this was a beautiful sunny day. There was not a cloud, there was not a whisper of wind. It was so calm. And I'm stood in front of this doorway and I was asking, do I need to go through the doorway? And straight away it thundered. And like this thunder came from nowhere, and it was like the elements were answering. Everywhere we went on this trip, the water was communicating, the winds, the different elements in different ways. So we were just being guided by the elements. We were being guided by different beings that were helping us. When we went to Sama Sajatusa, these wolves were coming out, these crystal white wolves. There were these ancient goddesses showing up that were just guiding us the whole way. Yeah, it was amazing. And there's many sacred sites around Romania, as you kind of alluded to. I mean, Shinkovec is one of my favorites. Going to the cave there. I mean, I've had some wild experiences there. Going to the Sphinx, obviously, which is above the tunnels that you were just talking about that go to Tibet and India and different places. So yeah, Egypt. So yeah, Romania is amazing. Where we're building our healing center, it's on a piece of land that's got a portal on it. We get the beings, opening the portal, coming through, doing work, leaving again. It's awesome.
Embodied. That's the reason why they came to Earth at this time during all the change, is for them to bring out their own inner creative genius. And it's buried in there somewhere, even if they're in a corporation. If their boss is a servant leader, if the boss has a way to encourage and bring out the creativity and the genius in their employees, then they may not have any problems at all. But that's still a rarity. I wish there were more servant leaders like that.
Yes, sometimes it's hard to bring in your outside activities, your passion and your hobbies, and discuss them openly with your colleagues, because if they go home and do nothing else but stare at the TV or Netflix or drink something, you will really feel or will look weird in their eyes. So they might just disregard it, and next time they will brush you off or walk away. They won't talk to you anymore.
Well, I think you have to get at a certain point when you realize that you're a spark of God, you have to not care what anyone else thinks, because it's not your business, really. I mean, you want to work well together. You want to be a good listener, and you want to be cooperative, and you want to do what you said you'll do. So as a team member, you want to be thought as a reliable resource, but you don't really have to have them think like you do, because in reality, none of us think the same. Every one of us has a different hologram, has a different view of the reality we're in, and we're constantly recreating it.
Yes.
So I mean, after a while, what I found that was hard in the corporate world when I had 80 employees was I'm so highly aware of my environment, the sensitivity and the empathic communication coming in. That was hard. Not necessarily whether they saw me or not. They had to know I was different. You can't hide. I mean, you think you're putting all this effort into hiding, and they can tell. They can tell. It's like, what planet is she from? So that's okay. That's fine with me. At a certain point, it was more about how do you best serve and how do you have integrity as much as possible. Well, I grew up in Ohio to a Jewish family that my father went to Yale and decided he was the youngest of 8. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa at age 18. He went into Yale at 14 and came out at 18. My mother also was like that. And so there were 5 kids. I'm number 4 out of 5 in 7 years. And so lots of brain power at the dinner table, a lot of competition. And I just watched everyone. I knew from a very young age that I didn't understand why I was there and why I picked that family. But I knew I had Arcturian support. I didn't know they were Arcturians. Like a lot of times I don't even tell people who the team is that I work with. But I had 4 beings that I think I had a hypnotherapy session where it was revealed that I jumped into a body and they all were going to, and they chickened out. And so they just stayed around me and let me do it. So anyway, but I remember even at a very young age, being able to see the future, see what's happening, wondering why people were doing what they were doing. Didn't they see that that would lead to something else? I used to get these clicks in my ears, and I would ask people around me, do you hear that? Do you hear that? And no one did. So after a while, I just learned to not say anything. But I do remember at 8 years old going out in the backyard and putting my hands up way high and saying, you left me at the wrong house. Come and get me now. And they didn't. So so here I am. So so I knew I was like an observer. I remember also thinking at a very young age, maybe 5 years old, how do you play this game here? How do you play the game of love? These people only know how to play conditional love games. How do you play real love? So I do remember that. But I tried to fit in just like everyone else does. I went to school, then I went to college, and I went to Italy. I got to go to school in Italy, got to go to different universities from 10th grade on. So that's where I keep calling you Claudiu. Well, I think it's a different thing of if you're living your life in gratitude and appreciation, you can live anywhere. It's just this culture, the Canadian and American, the North American culture, let's say, is not slow enjoyment. It's fast, fast, fast. It's adrenaline based. And the other is more heart based. And that's what I prefer. Anyway, so I think what you're seeing is that this evolution, as long as you stay with the idea that we're creating something new, and that relationships with yourself and with others is the primary thing to focus on, and then all the other. Because if you don't have a quality relationship with yourself, you can't have a quality relationship with anyone else, and you can't do good business. You can't be a good steward for people. You can't do just about anything. The benefit of having these guys with me is they kept me out of trouble. They would tell me, they would know truth from fiction, and they would guide me and say, no, that's not going to work for you. And whenever I followed them, it worked out great for me. So I felt like they kept me safe.
Yeah, very nice. Very
Yeah,
nice to have
yeah.
such guidance.
Yes. Well, because a lot of little children have imaginary friends that probably aren't imaginary, that are their guardian angels or their other family members that are not in physical. So I think, I don't know if I'm a walk-in, if I almost died when I was 2 weeks old, and there was a pandemic in Cincinnati, where I was born, and I was in the hospital, an influenza. And so I made it. So I don't know if they walked in there, or I'm not like Vivian, where I've been up in the spaceship. But I've been told many times where people, two major times were with Indigenous people, where they kind of looked all the way through me. One of them said to me something like, "You're Arcturian. How are you living here? How are you doing it?" So it's like, I don't know. Well, most of my clients, we start out with a soul illumination reading. And if I feel, okay, I'll back up. Most of my clients come out of referrals, or they find me over the internet. I don't have one person recommending me all the time, like some of my clients do. It's because it's a frequency match. And I've been doing this for 24 years. So people from all over the world, I've worked with so many people I've never met in person, find me, and their soul finds me. There must only be a handful of people like me on the planet that are able to connect, reconnect, and do, it's like a soul retrieval, but it's only focused on your soul mission that you chose before you embodied. I'm sure there's lots of other people that can bring in and release traumas. I know there's lots of people can do that, but my job is to help as many people wake up to their divinity. And so I do that through helping these teachers, these new leaders, wake up to their soul mission and then help them build that. So the soul mission, I call it soul illumination. So I open up the Akashic records in order to get into the field to connect you to your soul. Then your soul shows me a movie in full color. It's almost like I'm sitting on a park bench on the right-hand side, sitting there watching a movie, telling you. Now, a lot of times it's in symbols. It's a full movie of, usually it starts at the end point.
I basically thrive in motion. My practice, I have you to thank for putting me on Spiritually Inspired. The business has taken off. I have a lot of clients now, and it's getting busy, which is a lovely thing. It's really nice to be able to help people. I've transitioned more into adding mediumship to my practice. I just got off the plane from the Arthur Findlay College, where I got to do an intensive in mediumship and energy, precision energy management. Some of the most incredible work and the most incredible teachers I've ever seen. So like, you're in class with people and the teacher's talking and you're receiving information, she's telepathic, and you're getting information around what's happening. I got to do platform mediumship in front of 50 people, which is pretty amazing. So the Arthur Findlay College, there's a urban myth, I don't know if it's true or not. This is the school that Hogwarts is based on. This is an actual school that's dedicated to the psychic sciences. I've never felt more at home in my life. They have a bar on campus, so you'll be in sessions all day doing aura paintings and mediumship. And we had one exercise where you're both in a car and the person driving is having an experience and you have to read their experience and see what they're seeing. Amazing. And then you go to the bar and then you're listening to Led Zeppelin and dancing with psychics from Finland and Romania and France and all over the world. And we were the first class that had plant medicine facilitators who also were psychic. And that was a big step for them. It's very British and very amazing. And I launched Spirit Walker. Spirit Walker is the name of the brand, and I'm calling it Earth's premier dimensional travel service. And so we go from psychic work to curated travel, and we go visit wisdom keepers in the places where they live, and we bring clients.
Yes, in fact, I was amazed when you mentioned that you're gonna go back to school, to Arthur Findlay College, and it shows me that it doesn't matter at what level you are on your spiritual path, there is always something new to learn, and especially at that level when everyone is at your level or beyond, and it's fascinating to see that everyone wants more and more because they want to help others.
It's infinite. The big joke at the school was they gave us these meal cards, and mine said normal, and I would always be like, I'm normal, look, and it was a big joke because everyone you're talking to is psychic, everyone's tracking everything. I did my first platform mediumship session for the school, and you're in front of 50 people, and just a recap. I'm with this man, he's showing me South America. He's short, but he has a really, really big energy, and he's wearing this indigenous hat, but he's doing it ironically. And this woman goes like this, and she goes, I think I can take that. And I felt this feeling go boom through a recognition through my chest. And I said, okay, he's telling me a word now. I'm going to murder it. I'm sorry, I don't speak your language. Mosito, Osito. And she burst into tears. And when she was ready to talk again, she said, Osito means little bear. It's my dad's pet name for me growing up. And she is Buckets, And this stuff's real. And I said, okay, he's showing me you sitting with him in like a window, and you're reading to him, but he's not responding. He's quiet. And she said, oh yeah, he had cognitive decline. And I said, oh, he's telling me thank you for doing that. It's very golden light. It's very beautiful. He's letting me know how grateful he is. And then we had all these messages, and she was so moved that when the class was over, I just stayed with this person, and we walked to lunch and sat down and had lunch, my new friend and her father who had passed and me. Yeah, it's like a miracle.
Matt, you have so many talents. So one of them, I think, is being a psychocartographer. What exactly is that?
Psychocartography is like this. There's the territory, and then there's the map. When you're going into like the divine field with people, and they're going for the first time, you're teaching someone how to navigate. So psychocartography is map making with energy using your gifts. Imagine you've got a flashlight in the middle of a desert, and that's your first experience of what we call tapping in, right? And then you mosey around in there for a little bit, and you realize that things are becoming familiar, and you realize you can walk around, you can breathe, this is kind of an equivalent of, kind of getting a bit of acuity with your gifts, which everyone has. Cut to really far down the road, dark night of the soul has happened, you've moved through all your deepest work, and you realize that not only can you control the light, but you're not really even sure the ground is there. And you know how to go into the field and come out of the field and get information for yourself and others. Like, that's what we're here to teach each other. That is what enlightenment is like. You wake up to the divine inside of you. And so psychocartography is like a really fancy name for this process of remembering oneself. When I was at Findlay, I heard from guidance that we brought you here to teach you how to navigate non-local consciousness and to show others. So in a way, mediumship is that, because your consciousness is non-local. People talk about guides, right? The way it's been taught to me is that guides are dimensional reflections of your highest self. So it's happened a lot in work where you go into the field with somebody and you go into practice, if it's psychic or if it's plant medicine. And if you're early in your path, you get shown guides that are appropriate for where you are in your journey. So it could be a grandma or a family member or a dog that passed. And then as you go farther along your path, the frequency and the vibration of the guides changes. So then it's like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, then it's angels, then it's light beings. And then at a certain point, it all boils down to one voice. And so the way I work is I'm looking for resonance in the client. And so if someone shows up and it's an ancestor, it's probably pretty clear. If they stand over the right shoulder, it could be on the mother's line, the left shoulder of the father's line. You can see that, and they'll communicate with you, and they'll tell you who they are. Sometimes they speak, sometimes they show objects. I've had an experience totally by accident. He wasn't really a client, he was a cousin-in-law. And we were at the family house for Christmas, and I'm talking to my wife and her father, and the man of the house comes home, who's our host, and all of a sudden this person is talking to me. And he's like, hey, Kip's home. Could you tell him this? Could you tell him this? Could you tell him this? I was wondering about this. And I realized that I'm having this conversation with somebody who's not there. Because I look up and my wife and her dad are just staring at me. And then Kip comes over. I go, okay, here we go. I go to my visitor, what was your job in this life? And he holds out his hands, and there's a compass and a sextant in his hands, brass. Mm-hmm. And I go, Kip, what did your dad do for a living? And he goes, he was an engineer. I go, okay. And then I saw that this man was with somebody. And I said, who's with you? And I said, what's your name, please? Hi, I'd like to meet you. She said, Joe. And I said, okay. Kip, what was your mom's name? And he goes, Joan. And I go, okay. And then the father starts talking, and he says, tell him I go with him when he flies. Tell him I'm so proud of him. And I say to Kip, are you flying or taking airplane lessons or doing something like that right now? And he goes, yeah, I'm flying, I'm taking airplane lessons. I go, okay, I think I'm talking to your dad right now. And he says to me that he goes with you in the plane and he's so proud of you. And Kip burst into tears and ran away. And the father showed me an image of him holding his son in Africa. I guess they traveled a lot. And those trees, the baobab trees that go like this, and planes were landing, and he was holding his son and toddling him. And then the father said, tell Kip this word. It's Swahili. It's this word. If you say this to him, he'll know it's me. And, respect for the client. And I said, or the future client. I said, I'm really grateful that you're talking to me, and I'm grateful to serve. And I don't think he's ready. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel to me like he's happy about what's happening right now. So I thank you. And when the time is right, let me know and we'll work together. But he has to be ready. We have to respect him, his heart and his house. And I was like, okay. Want to hear a crazy story? Please. Okay, that's a great question. I kept this secret for a long time. It's in my family on both sides. My grandmother's from Russia, and she was a full-on psychic. So we'd play games when I was a kid. It always comes out fully fleshed when you're a kid, and then they try to bake it out of you with society. But we'd play this game, and we'd play hide and seek. And she would hide something in her apartment, and then I'd read her and go find it. And we thought it was hilarious. And then I would go visit her. She was my best friend because she saw me. And every time I came over, she'd have a little metal head sitting from the middle school, sitting on the front steps talking to her, and she'd be like counseling them and reading them. It was really incredible. And then on my mother's side, we have a healer lineage going back a long time. My mom is a medical intuitive. She's a nurse. I kept this to myself for a long time because I went to Catholic school. I even traveled as a Jewish person one summer on a Jewish teen tour. I was just looking for the place. I went to Baptist Bible camp, And then one day, I saved my mom's life with this work. And that was my audition. She had had a break, and she was not in a good way. It wasn't her fault. It was a lot of things. It was diet, it was having gifts and unresolved trauma, just a different life, a different generation. When she had me, my dad was fighting in a war. So he got 10 days to come home to have his son, and because I wasn't coming, they pulled me out with forceps. The military way. I'm fine with that now. At the time, I was like, what? And then he flew away. And so my mom had a baby in the middle of nowhere, and they used to put the death count on the news. So she had a lot of stuff bottled up. Anyway, it came to the head at one point. It came out of her, and she had a break. And she was getting ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I walked into the room, and she was gray as a sheet, and my dad was sitting next to her. And my dad said she's been up for 2 days, and she was not here. Her spirit was floating above her. And I said, what do I do? Ask the connection, what do you do? They said, look at your father. And then I looked at him, and he was not ready for her to go. This is his life partner of 50 years. So I said, tell me what to do. And that was my audition for my family. I helped bring my mom's spirit back in her body. I learned how to talk to her higher self, her present self, and her child self at the same time. I'd never done that before. And it was like pulling a balloon in. And once she was anchored in her body, I grounded her and gave her some melatonin, and she slept for 2 days.
I think kids are coming in differently these days. They're coming in gifted and kind of mouthy about it. They don't hold back. And I believe parents are parenting differently too. I believe that the relationship between most children and parents, or whoever's raising them, whether that's aunties or grandparents or the full tribe, seems like communication is getting better anyway. But I would say my advice as a spiritual mama, and also what I'm hearing from my angel self and from the guides, is keep the dialogue open without judgment. And you can certainly ask about their experiences without saying, oh, that's so scary. Oh, are you okay? You don't have to escalate the sense of fear. You can just say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And depending on what their age is, you could say, well, could you draw it? Could you show me with your, could you draw it, show me with your arms? How did it make you feel? So I just, am feeling that things are changing anyway in the spiritual world, in this 3D world, with the spirit world coming back in, and we're awakening. That evolution seems to be happening anyway, and just embracing our children as they are more verbal about what they experience. It'll be different because it just is, I think, my friend, it just is. Because our current children, they're here to create a different structure. And the parents have one foot in experiencing the structure that exists and walking their kids through their children's experience of breaking the structure that exists so they can build something new. So this is a hard job for current parents, because they're going to be holding space for the rule breakers. We have Archangel Azrael who comes in to support all of this. We've got Gabriel, we've got Azrael, we've got Raphael. These are the three main cheerleaders that are going to be guiding this, because this generation, they're the deconstructors, and then they're the builders. This is really big. And so they're not doing it without help. They are angels in body, just like me. This may be a conversation that people are saying, well, how can she be in a human body and be an angel? Well, it just is. It just is, people. It just is. I don't have all the answers. It just is. Some people are star seeds. That's lovely. They're from another planet. And the children that are here, that is going to be like, no big deal. It's a Tuesday. I'm an angel. I'm a starseed, because this is how we evolve. Love is coming back. And even though that sounds magical, where that this person's an angel, this person's a starseed, it's no big thing, because we're just coming back into the oneness. And that oneness is like a big sparkly ball of all these different facets and colors, but it's just one big ball. Right?
Yes, indeed.
And these kids are our kids, your kids, my kids, their kids, although they better not do it too soon. No grandkids yet in my house. Their kids are going to come in to teach us that oneness again. They're bringing that back. And so it feels like the old model of going to church and learning about Jesus in the clothes that were unstained, in the Caucasian body, standing still and serene, separate from the people. That may be the religious model, but that I'm not seeing a lot of people resonating with that. I'm seeing a more personal relationship with this energy version of the Yeshua. And it has this gritty, magical feeling to it. And it's going out. It's going out to all the people. And that Yeshua sometimes switches to the Buddha or to Kuan Yin, to other ascended masters, as if it's all the same ascended master, but it will change to whomever needs to see it. And that seems to be part of the same evolution that we were talking about with the children. It's the model that's changing. It no longer serves us to feel that we're separate from that power that we believe may have created us. We don't need an overseer or a parent. We don't need that. We're ready to recollaborate, to go back in, weave together. That's what I'm feeling and hearing.
Yes, and every movie depicting Yeshua and his disciples shows him close to people, talking to any social class, no matter the label. So I think even if we watch the movie, somehow we moved away from that concept of closeness, as you said, with his spirit and his teachings.
And even with the spirit in our body, the Yeshua spirit in our body, that it's outside of us, and we all have that Christ light, that Yeshua spirit right in our body. It burns in us. It's our chi spirit, and we're starting to remember, all of us, that is part of us. You know, we're just a costume. We're just like animatronics. We're nothing. And then we have that spirit in us, and that's the Yeshua spirit. We're starting to remember that too. And that's really the real lesson, is that we've all come here looking like the same beam of light or the same love inside, but we decided, well, as we experience that, I'll look like this, you look like that. And that's the kind of the microcosm of that lesson you were just talking about. We're the Christ light inside. And so when I do my work as an angel in a human body, I'm a messenger. That's one of the messages I'm here to share. That we are not separate from each other. We're not separate from God.
Do you connect with galactic beings and communicate to them? And if yes, what are you talking about?
Well, I am a connector to all galactic angelic beings in the quantum. And so that can be many types of beings, and some of them are what we might consider extraterrestrial. And my peeps, my team, call themselves Sarai, and they are a council of galactic beings that feel rather female. Although sometimes they'll bring in a larger council, and they are just kind of there's a bit of Sarai that is kind of a moving chair of people or councils that they'll bring in. So they might be Andromedan or Pleiadian or Lyran, depends on who's needed in that kind of advisory seat. And the rest of them remain kind of the same, and they're tall blue beings. And sometimes when they send a messenger to this vibrational frequency, this earth frequency, it looked more like a gray, but they've visited me my whole life. And yes, they are Sarai, so I work with them quite a bit.
And because you are an angel, does it mean that you don't have a galactic family, like Syrians, Pleiadians, Andromedans?
Correct. No, my origin goes to the Seraphim realm, so they are my community.
And did you figure out if this is your first incarnation as an angel, or you had multiple ones in the past?
I've always been angelic in my core, and this is my 7th Earth incarnation, the 7th time I've been here.
And when you travel through multiple or the multiverse of parallel realities, do you use your light body for traveling?
Yes, yes. Sometimes I can feel my physical body shift frequency so much that I feel like I'm coming off the bed. I don't know if I really am or not, but it feels like I'm humming off the bed, but it is my astral or my light body that's moving out.
And how far in the universe have you traveled so far?
Oh gosh. I don't know how to answer that. I've been back home to the heavenly realm quite a bit. I go there, I mean, daily. Because this is really even though this is the place I visit, really. I'm really back home now, doing an interview here, and seeing clients here. It's really kind of a weird concept. I frequently go to the Akashic Records. That's kind of a work trip. Personal trips. I have access to all my other parallels. I mean, that's I guess far travel. I can travel in my map this way and go into what we used to call the past lifetimes, but the other versions of me, and they're located here in the quantum. And then kind of up here and here, that's when I can go to the other galaxies. And that feels, I guess we could say, far. But it's all kind of like a shape of a walnut. But I can also keep it kind of in my, it's all here. It's accessible right here, like the shape of a pendant right here. It's no bigger than a walnut. The whole thing is no bigger than a walnut.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a near-death experience, but I nearly died a few times, but no, not quite there. Just once. I think it was just because of the pain medication was so heavy. I felt myself leave my body, and sort of my back was sort of stuck to the roof looking down at my body. And then when I realized, oh, that's my body, I went straight back into my body, but I didn't die. It was just an experience. I was absolutely in love with Jesus when I was a little girl. I didn't know when I was a little girl. I lived in the countryside in the Blue Mountains of Australia, and we were brought up Catholic. But because I obviously, when you're that young and you're in a country like Australia, you don't know about Yogananda and all these other great spiritual masters and women. I just knew about Jesus. And so I got permission to be able to go to Mass every day with the nuns, because the priest would go to the convent every day and do Mass for them. And so every day from the age of 5 onwards, I went to Mass every morning, and I'd be in tears every time. But then, eventually I stopped that. Puberty hit and I started singing. And I mean, I was singing on television since I was 5 years old, but I took it really seriously for, to start a rock band and everything when I was younger, so I sort of forgot about church and all that sort of thing. I was totally focused on becoming successful and getting a great band together and managing them and writing songs. And that takes years of dedication. And it's a very, very hard job to be an Australian female lead singer touring Australia. It's trying to get the gigs and agents and record companies. But I did it. We became very successful. And but it was after the car accident that I went on a deep, deep spiritual dive and found an enlightened teacher. And I went off the grid for 10 years studying with her and meditating for hours and hours every day. And I took myself off all social media and all that sort of thing until eventually I became awakened, enlightened as well. And now she doesn't teach anymore, but now I teach students from all over the world. Well, I was living in Malaysia and I was running Bob Proctor's business and my business globally from there. And Bob and I were creating a lot of events all over Asia. And I was in Kuala Lumpur. And I'd heard about Yogananda, but I hadn't read his autobiography. And then Stuart Wilde, who's also an author who was in England, but a very good friend of mine when he was living in Australia, very well-known author. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was huge. Sold millions of books. But he was a really good friend of mine. And I called him one day when he was back living in London when I was in Kuala Lumpur. And I said, what's my next step? I've read Swami Muktananda. I've read, I'm really into St. Teresa of Avila, Sri Ramakrishna, the Gospel of. He said, what about Yogananda? And I said, I've heard of him, but what? He said, you haven't read Autobiography of Yoga? And I said, no. So he told me to get the blue copy. He said, because the red copy is not the original. After Yogananda left the body, the lady who was running Self-Realization Center, he knew her, and he said she took out some of the stuff because she thought it was too complicated for people to understand and too personal. And he said, but one of his devotees who lives in Canada got the original copy, the original script that Yogananda first released, and it's the blue cover. And so Stuart Wilde said, get that one, which I did. I ended up reading both of them to see the difference, and I could see where she edited out Yogananda. It's like, what? Who does that? But and when I read it, I was like, oh my God. I mean, I was just in love, and I felt Shakti. I felt light coming down through my face just reading it, which is the same thing that happened to me when I read Swami Muktananda's book too, Play of Consciousness. It's really interesting that these people have been gone for so long, but from their words, you can still get a rush of Shakti from reading from an enlightened teacher. And Yogananda was a Mahasiddha. He was Big Daddy, you'd know as a devotee. So I just thought it was fascinating how he toured the world looking for other enlightened people that he could, hang with and get to know, and worked out whether they were really, truly, awakened, or it was just some sort of thing with the mind, because the mind can create anything. But anyway, every one of my students, I always tell them, you've got to read that book. Not wondering what it was anymore. And he said, you've got to find an enlightened teacher. He said, I had one in Toronto. He said he left the body a long time ago, but he said, I studied with him for 6 years before he left the body. He said, that's what you need to do, find someone who's enlightened. And I said, how do I do that? And he said, well, you just ask the universe, I want a real teacher who's alive. So I started asking people, and because I was living in Asia, I could easily, because I did seminars and singing and everything in 26 countries. So every time I went somewhere, I'd say, do you know if there's any enlightened teachers alive in this country, in Japan or here or there? And I ended up going to 3 different people. I don't know if they were enlightened or not, but one of them, what's his name? He would have gold come out of his hands and stuff, and I didn't like him. I just thought, well, this is like a magician. I want to have someone who can teach me, and this man isn't teaching or anything, and I don't even think he speaks English. And it was in India, and the accommodations and everything were nasty. And then I went to a Zen teacher who I think may have been enlightened in Japan, and he was so rude. He said, I don't take females. They can't become awakened. He spoke English, but he was really rude. So I was like, I think enlightenment would be happy and joyous, like Yogananda sounds. This is just crankiness. I don't understand. Anyway, so eventually I moved to America. I wanted to start from scratch where nobody knew me. I wanted to challenge myself to get out there in the world. And I traveled by bus and train and sometimes fly to different states every month and did seminars so I could get myself out there again, and concerts. And it was really amazing to be able to do that at the time in my late 30s and mid-30s, I should say, and, get a career going again. Started a TV show, did all this at the same time, going to different places and looking for an enlightened teacher. Anyway, and so some people would come over from India, and if I heard about it, I'd go to their event. And then I met someone at an event, who's Johnny Endara, and his teacher was Rama, who was a Mahasiddha, Big Daddy, like Yogananda, and he'd left the body. And so Johnny was looking for another enlightened teacher because, he'd already had an enlightened teacher. He's like, I can't not have this light sent to me until I'm awakened. And so I met him at a yoga event, and he said, do you think this teacher was enlightened? And I said, why would you ask me? Because I didn't know him. And he said, I feel like you would know. I said, I don't know if he is or not. I know he's talking about knowing Babaji and all this sort of thing, but he's not my teacher. I know that because I don't feel anything for him, any love or anything. And then about 2 months later, Johnny called me and he said, one of the students of Rama, he said, and I know her, he said that I've been told that she's become enlightened and she's going to start teaching students. So she was teaching at a, just a $5 event in Balboa Park in San Diego. And we went into this hall and there's just a couple of lights, just 2 lamps. They're only just lamps. She's sitting on a chair and she's like at least 10 years younger than me. And I just felt this wave of ecstasy go through me. And I felt such love and my eyes were tearing up and I could hardly drive home, and so I begged her to let me be a student of hers, and I became a student of hers for a long time. And it was amazing. We flew all around the world. I mean, it was really strict, but, we're going to Egypt. It's going to cost this much. We're going to next month. It'll be, next week I'll be teaching in San Francisco. You've got to be there. I'd be like, but I just gave up everything else because I couldn't bear to not have her as my teacher. And so she had about 100 students in that 10 years. And then she didn't retire, but she's doing something else now because it's really, really hard being a teacher and looking after all these students. But for some reason, because I've been, like she says to me now, because I've been on stage all my life, I can handle the attention without feeling sick or getting drained too much from people's attention, because I do transmit light to people in their photograph or on Zoom. And many of my students from all walks of life, medical, you know what it's like. People say, what are your clients? I said, I don't have clients, I have students, customers, whatever you want to call it. But they're your soul family because it's not a demographic. It is someone who is soul sick and is searching for their awakening, which is the purpose of life, is enlightenment. That is the entire purpose. And so the students that are attracted to me are like one of them who's now in early enlightenment. He's been with me for about 12 years. William, he's in Ireland. He's and another one, Charles. He definitely went into early enlightenment as well after a few years. And like William says, I was looking for a teacher. He said, I didn't know about enlightenment per se, but I was looking for someone because I was so unhappy, but I did feel a love for spirit, And he said when he was looking up on YouTube, and I've got many, many videos on YouTube, and when he found me, he's like, he couldn't stop watching or listening to me teaching, but he said, I couldn't understand why I was attracted to her because I was expecting an aging Asian man, not this irreverent Aussie rock singer. But he said, I could feel light and I could see different morphing of your face. And he said it was really fascinating. And so he never left. So the students that come to me generally have been with me for, many, many years.
Yeah, it's easy to say. It's easy to say surrender or let go, but the internal is an extraordinary thing. It's quite a profound. It creates a profound shift on the inside, but the actual release of that is for me a very specific feeling, and that is what I have become more proficient in, both in the healing work and in my life, because I kept seeing the benefits from it. So maybe for your listeners, just even hearing someone say that the surrendering always produces something exponentially more magnificent than you could ever imagine might be enough to help people be willing to let go. Because everyone actually does know how to surrender. Everyone does know how to let go. It's just our willingness to actually fully 1,000% do it. It was one of the miracle moments for me in this whole process. I was playing in my office just with myself in meditation and did an experiment of surrendering my heart and my mind into each other. because there were two, and I'm like, why is there two? Let me do this experiment. And in that, it brought me into the present moment. And I also saw that the split that had been happening was a protective mechanism that most of humanity is doing. But I also saw that it didn't work, and that my mind was strategizing in life to make choices and decisions to protect the emotional body, which had its wounds and its stories and its experiences. But that separation keeps the wounded place from actually receiving the love and the light that it needs for healing. And when I did that experiment and my heart and my mind came into oneness and I was resting in the present moment, that information was revealed, and it also became clear that all of the backlog emotions that had been tucked away, just as you're saying, could rush to the surface because they suddenly had what they needed, which was the present moment. And in that, all the infinite love and truth and everything we need is available. And that's what began my process of all my past lives coming forward, to be able to meet all of the pains and experiences and traumas and the material that had been stored and tucked away, in order for it to actually start to resolve and go through that process. So our instinct is to withdraw the way we would with putting your hand in fire, right? That's one instinct that's really useful. But when we apply it to the emotional reality, it doesn't actually work. It might work in the moment. It might be needed or useful in the moment when a situation is too intense to navigate. But ultimately, it needs to come to the present moment, be fully felt, for it to actually unfold and heal and then reveal the gifts that are underneath. This key element here is trust.
Yes.
And for me, in that first experiment in the 2003, there was this deep questioning about trust. Did I trust that deep voice of source or not? And so in that initial experiment, I didn't even know about awakening. That trust is what I surrendered back into and surrendered everything. And so with people's wants versus needs, that underlying trust is what helps one let go of attachment to the want. You can still want whatever you want. We're human. And when we have that deeper connection with ourself and with source, it can be scary. But if we lean into that trust, then that's what we can fall back into on the inside, and then let that produce all the gifts. I mean, it produces all the gifts anyway. It produces everything. But in order to keep aligning with that deepest place on the inside, that's where we go to find that trust and that truth, and where all those gems are revealed, strength, or whatever it takes for us to be willing to be present with whatever we need to be present with. So everything we need to navigate our life comes from that deep inside place.
Kristin, I heard you giving the example about the hand being the entirety of God and the fingers being the God individuality. Is it possible that when we are all awake and realize that we are, symbolically speaking, God's fingers, we are all going to speak the same truth, maybe differently nuanced, but in the essence the essence will be the same?
It's an excellent question. When you use the word essence, it's like, would the essence be the same? It depends on how we use the word essence. So if we use the hand example, like what you're saying, each of the fingers are a little different from each other, and they have a little different function. Slightly, but they do. And so in that same way of our unique expression of the oneness that we all have a unique expression, and we each have a different emphasis of that infinite totality. So we could play with the word superpower, right? Superpowers that are present with the podcaster for being able to speak and engage and bring out the nuances that your listeners will love, right? That's a superpower, right? And for me, the healing transformation and purity, coming into of the truth of what they are and transform the distortions and traumas and all of that into the truth of what it is, right? It's like a God superpower. Both are. And when I'm talking about the fingers, with everyone has a unique brilliance that's different from everyone else's. So those differences, in my experience so far, remain true. And if you open to experiencing all the different enlightened masters or beings that have come before, Buddha or Jesus or Ramana, you can still feel their unique flavor when you access them. And yet you can also see that the larger truth is the same. They're all going to be expressing love and truth and beauty and presence, but in a unique way. So we are all that. And yes, as we continue to unfold in our journey of self-realization, we come into deeper and deeper awareness of the oneness that we are, and can express that more purely, more cleanly, more accurately, but we still express it through our uniqueness.
Yes, and we can only hope that at one point all of us will reach that stage where we're gonna go back to source, and only animals and plants will remain on Earth to continue the revolution.
Why? I'm curious. I have a different thought about that. I'm curious. I can either ask you why would you want that, or I can just share another perspective.
You can share your perspective first.
Okay. So life is absolutely extraordinary. It's completely extraordinary. And we as oneness create layers of realities to manifest within, to experience. And so this is a precious, precious planet. And with all the diversity, all the extraordinary frequencies of God consciousness, whether through plants or animals or people or rocks or crystals or water or sun, right? All of this is it's a love fest that's happening. And in my awakening, I have come more and more into the recognition of that, so that the daily experience is entirely different. I wake up in the morning and I communicate with the sun and hear what the sun's frequencies are, the gifts for today, and have a dialogue and an exchange. And then that's my morning blessing of being with the sun. And so so I kind of want to just address that piece for me of the extraordinariness of being here, but also when I see everyone's souls and see everyone's God self and see everyone's, I mean, I don't have language for all these layers of what we all are and how we're manifesting through this cascade of embodiment to then be here and have a human life, that there are stories unfolding on all of those layers. And it's like consciousness, oneness, source is a storyteller experiencing itself. And there's a level of challenge that happens here that is different than in other realms. It's like when you go to the gym, or go exercising or swimming or something, it like you're building muscles. So there's opportunities here that are totally divine. And that evolutionary process that the soul goes through is a gift. And so when I'm working in the soul classroom and seeing everyone's souls, I'll see the different maturity levels. And one isn't better than the other. It's like kindergartner or PhD. They both have gorgeousness to them. You don't suddenly want to take the kindergartner and make him a PhD person, you know? And the PhD person can learn a lot from the kindergartner with the innocence, the openness, the curiosity, and to not have the level of wisdom or the information start to block the preciousness of that 5-year-old. So this is a long response to what you had shared, but and I recognize the place where there's a struggle, or when we're meeting other people's distortions and we're witnessing destruction and disease and all these things that are challenging. But when I look into any one of those stories, I look into it in the depth of these layers, and there's an extraordinary story that's unfolding. And life is rigged for awakening. It's rigged for us to have the opportunity to embody our God consciousness, to recognize who we are.